I have Joel Gordon here, and Joel is awesome. I'm excited for you guys to get to meet him. He's a technician, an artist, a designer, and a fabricator. He has an experience and training in electronics and coding, and he actually used his first 3D printer in 1991. And I love this. He said it was love at first sight, which is awesome. Joel was the co-founder and the executive director of Arkansas's first makerspace, the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub. He founded Steam Rocket Engine LLC, which is an innovation and makerspace consulting firm. And he is currently the making and tinkering manager at the Scott Family Amazeum. We're really excited for him to be here. He's gonna have time at the end for questions. He's also will pass off his email, and he's going to encourage you to reach out to him if you want to connect about projects or work that you're doing. So with that, Joel, I'm going to pass it off to you to talk to us about prototyping.
Thanks, Stacy. Yeah. That was the nicest introduction I could have gotten. Yes. Hi, guys. So I'm comfortable in my shop, so we're going to talk from my shop today. I have a, I don't know, did you share the PDF, or is this something that you want to?
I will share that right now. Give me one second. Okay. I'll drop it.
So I put together, I've only got 45 minutes with you, so I'm going to try and go through this a lot quicker than I usually do. So I actually put together an outline, something for you guys to follow along with and take some notes, but I'm going to try to leave 15 minutes at the end to take questions, because right now I'm free. So if you guys are working on a project, it's kind of the best time to ask me questions. And I'm really hoping that you do, because most of my job these days is talking to 8-year-olds. And every chance that I can get to talk to adults who have cool ideas, I like to take advantage of that. So please ask me questions. All right. So we're going to talk right from the top. You guys have already, if you were in the earlier, workshop, then we talked about defining a problem. So that's really where I start. Anytime that somebody comes to me with an idea for a prototype, a lot of my job was first evaluating whether or not I thought it was a viable product, if it could be manufactured, beyond actually developing a prototype. Is it a product that can be manufactured is a really important question, but it all starts with defining a problem. And I break problems into 3 different categories. First is personal focus. And that's when somebody walks into you and looks you in the eye and says, I have this idea for a product. You know how you hate it when? Well, that's a very personal focus. That's a product that is going to speak to me as an individual, and that's what is going to sell me on that product. So personal focus. Societal focus is focus on poverty, on food insecurity, and the pandemic right now is a great example of a social problem. And then infrastructure focus for me is more like if a company came to you and said, we're looking for a solution within our structure to fix this problem that we have. That's an infrastructure systems issue. So that is very defined. And that's important because along with defining a problem, you also need to set up parameters for that issue. So define your parameters is that next step. Once you've found the problem, you want to define those parameters, and it comes down to this. Things like, who's your customer? What's your target market? Very important. Where will your product be used? And again, that's a parameter, right? Is it going to be used underwater? Because if it's going to be used underwater, there's a lot of limitations to that. So that's the environment and why that matters. Who is your competition in this market? Don't reinvent the wheel. And what I mean by that is this: if you have an idea for a product, before you ever take it to the point where you begin to prototype that problem, start looking at other solutions to your problem. If this is a situation where your idea is literally reinventing the wheel, it's not going to go very far. So do yourself a favor. Dig in and really research what else is out there. Because if you come up with an idea and you invest your whole self into that idea and then discover somebody's already done it, then that's a lot of wasted time and wasted energy. And you thought of that idea, so you'll think of another one. So, take that, as impetus that obviously you came up with a really good idea because somebody's out there doing it. Take that as your impetus and come up with that next good idea. Between each one of these, if you look at the PDF, I just put in letters with an exclamation point. It just says iterate. So that's something I'll harp on as we move along. Iteration. Iteration is one of the most important things that you can do. And you may, a lot of people tend to look at iteration as this issue of what I did doesn't work, so now I have to redo it. I don't see it that way at all. I see it as I'm moving down a path. It's a linear motion. I'll get so far along that path, and then, you know, maybe there's a creek there that I have to cross. So at that point, I have to sort of look at what I'm doing, redefine my parameters, and iterate that idea, and then keep moving forward, right? Once you get past that point of defining your parameters, you really have to begin to narrow your focus, and that's the brainstorming phase. So you've defined your problem, you have set up your parameters, you know what your market is, you know sort of the limitations of maybe your materials. Are these things available to me? You've got those parameters in mind, but now you're really ready to move on to that brainstorming phase. And I'm going to say something right here, and it may sound a little silly, but when people bring me their ideas and I would begin to evaluate it, a question that I would often ask is, and very straight-faced, is it bigger than a bread box? You guys even know what a bread box is? That's a little antiquated, I know, but all right. Is it bigger than a bread box? And here's what I mean by that. If by the time you're coming to me, either as an advisor or a designer, a prototyper, a fabricator, by the time you're coming to me, if you can't very quickly tell me it's smaller than a bread box, it's bigger than a bread box, if you can't tell me that, you're not ready to talk to me yet. And that's a really important lesson, and I'll explain that. A lot of people came to me and said, I have this great idea, I just need you to make it for me. Well, that's a gold mine. Great. You know, that it'll take me about a year. I cost this much. Let's get started, right? You need to have that narrowed down. If you don't have in your head a very succinct idea of what you're asking me for, you need to do your homework. You need to go a little further. All right. Can it be demonstrated easily? So here's what I mean by that. Illustrations, can you show me slides, simple models, build a model for me, show me what it is. Can it be easily explained? Demonstrate it. Not a working model, not your MVP, not that minimum viable product. Just can you describe it to me? Can you easily explain what this is? Can you give me an example? All of the above. You should be able to do that by the time you get to somebody like me. So can you write an elevator pitch? Also really important, and I'll tell you why. I had an opportunity once, and I really mean this. An elevator pitch is an elevator pitch. I got into an elevator on the first floor and realized that the guy standing next to me was the president of Intel. Michael, and I'm blanking on Kredinsky. He's got a very crazy last name. But I had an opportunity between the first and the third floor to talk to him all by myself. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And I got to do it. I did it. You know, between the first and the third floor, I got to tell him about something that I really cared about. And I had the whole idea already in my head. I could do it. It's important when you think about an elevator pitch, it's really an elevator pitch. Can you tell me like that what your idea is? And that, again, you know, now I'm not going to be buying your idea, but if you can't do that by the time you get to me, you need to hold back. You need to do your homework. You're not far enough yet. All right. Again, following my notes. Hold on. My phone just went to sleep. All right. Then iterate. in between, every time, iterate. Customer survey. Before you have a prototype, question mark? Yes, customer survey. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you not have your prototype so you can take it to your customers? Well, here's what's going to happen. By the time you've invested all that time in a prototype and you go to your customer base and you say, what do you think about this? What do you think the first thing that's going to happen is? Somebody's going to tell you, that would be awesome if it fit in my purse. That would be great if I could wear it. That would be fantastic if it were only red. I mean, that's kind of a dumb one. But the first two, that's really good, right? If it could fit in my purse, if I could wear it, I would buy that. Well, that's giving you new parameters. That's new stuff that you can work with. If you've already invested all of this time in developing a prototype that you're ready to look at bringing into a manufacturing phase, you've gone too far, right? You're investing money, you're investing time. So get that stuff out of the way first. Talk to those customers. They're going to help you frame that up. They're going to help you figure out where your parameters lie, what else you can do, how you can improve that product. They're going to give you really good ideas because ultimately that's who you're going to sell it to, right? And whether you're looking to exit early and you're just hoping to sell your idea to a bigger company that's going to buy it and run with it, that's fine. But you need to do that customer discovery. You need to actually talk to people, probably have them sign an NDA if it's that kind of idea, and you need to have that. So once you've done it, once you've done that customer survey, what have you learned, right? What are the boxes that you can tick off that are going to change, hopefully improve that product, or I hate to say this, or get you to that point where you're maybe realizing that you're knocking on the wrong door. And you need to round it up and move on to that next good idea, right? It's important to know it. Before you've invested all that time and money into this, you need to have that. So that customers are one of the best places to start, because if nobody's going to buy it, something to think about. So once you talk to those customers, how did it change your idea? What are those things that you can very succinctly point out and say, this is part of that development. I'm moving further down that road. I'm iteration. I'm iterating and I'm developing that idea and I'm moving on. Now, kids, you're ready to prototype. Now we're at prototyping, finally, after all of that. So prototype doesn't mean working product. Do you guys understand what I'm saying with that? Typically, when I talk to people, they're like, I need a prototype. I'm like, great. What do you need it to do? Well, I need it to do exactly what I said it's going to do. It's going to be this. Okay, well, that's going to cost a lot of money, but you said you need a prototype. So here's an example. One of the prototypes that I developed for a company called Raft Up was they called me and they said, we're going in to talk to Bass Pro Shop on Monday, and we need a prototype to show them. This was Friday. The guy who owned that company happened to be a friend of mine. So he explained what he needed, and I said, well, I can't do that by Monday. I said, but here's what I can do. I can give you a really cool piece that you can show them and then explain what it does. And he said, so not a working prototype. And I went, no. I said, it's a prototype. You'll be able to show them. They'll see exactly what it is. You can then explain to them what it does, but it won't be a working prototype. And he said, that sounds great. And guess what? Got him a contract. So they walked in the door, they looked at it, they thought it looked cool. They heard what it's going to do. They got really excited. That was a prototype that he could use. And it didn't need to be a working prototype. So that's something to think about. When you say prototype, what is it you're looking for? Know that ahead of time. If you are making a prototype, you don't need a 3D printer. They're handy. I've got a few. I like having them. You don't need it. What you need are materials at hand. And here's what I mean by that. when you start laying out a prototype, when you start deciding what that product is, again, this is going to be a little before your time, but have any of you guys seen, oh God, now I'm having a senior moment, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Have you guys seen this movie? No, none of you have seen it because you're all so young. So Richard Dreyfuss, the actor, is in that movie. He has an experience. Now I'm going to sound crazy. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going for it. Richard Dreyfuss sees a UFO, and he starts immediately. He happens to be an artist. He's a sculptor. Everything he touches, he starts carving into this idea that's in his head. I mean, mashed potatoes become the material that he's using to develop this idea in his head. That's how you need to approach your prototype. It needs to start with drawings. If you have to use wet tissue paper that you squish together to make a raw sort of shape of what your idea is, fine. It can be Play-Doh. It doesn't matter. It's going to get you further. So don't think that, if I only had access to this, if I only had access to a 3D printer, if I only had access to a CNC machine, if only there was a production lab that I had access to, I could make my prototype. Listen, if you've got tape and cardboard, it's a good start. It's a great start. By the time you get to that point where you need an engineer, you need a fabricator, man, my favorite thing in the world were people who brought in this model that they had lovingly built out of aluminum foil and cardboard, because when they showed it to me, I immediately grasped an idea. I go, oh, that's what you're talking about. I get it. Then we jump onto the stage. Well, let's do this. Start making CAD drawings. Let's lay this out. Because they had a fleshed out idea. They thought through it far enough that they were using the materials at hand to create what they needed. It's a very important lesson. And a lot of you, I'm going to say, are probably out of practice of crafting, right? Raise your hand if in the last month you've taken a pair of scissors and cut construction paper. I'm looking for hands. There's one, two hands, 3 hands. Awesome. All right, there's probably a few more. So, we got other raised hands. Oh, that's great. There's a few of you. All right, it's important. It's important. Now, here's the deal. Not everybody's going to have those skills. That's okay. Find a friend who does. Don't head straight for that engineer that's going to cost you a bundle. Go to that friend who happens to be an artist and start to work with them, collaborate. Get the NDA ahead of time, get that non-disclosure agreement if you need to ahead of time, but start working there. Start with that. It's important because it's going to take you so much further down the road. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that, and this is what I mean. I did a lot of work I still do once in a while, for Arkansas Economic Development. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I got a call to talk to someone not too far from here who had an SBIR grant for a product that they've been working on for a year. Their SBIR grant was running out. They have been working with an engineer. I'm not naming names. They've been working with an engineer for a year. They barely had a product, but their SBIR grant, the time limit was running out. So they only had a few days left to finish this model out. Arkansas Economic Development and AMS asked me to go in and work with them to help them get across the line before their SBIR grant ran out. So I got paid a little bit to go in as an advisor, and I gave them a hand with it, and we finished it in time. What that came down to was that the engineer got paid for a year to create a product. Should it have taken a year? Probably not. That is no slight to the engineer, but there was no pressure on him. Probably not his only client. You need to have it far enough along that you can walk in and say, this is what I need from you. And the way you're going to get there is talking to folks like me, talking to your professors, talking to friends who know what they're doing. Everyone in your network is going to take you that much further, and you need to get as far along as you can, which means you need to self-prototype. You need to work on this yourself. You may feel like you're not that person, and that's okay. You know, every single one of us is a maker. We all have skills. We have hands that we work with. And the tools that you have, that you know how to use, those are the tools you use. If you're really good at doing a slideshow, great. Put a slideshow together for me that's going to very succinctly explain exactly what it is that you need from me, and then I'll take it from there. All right. But if you're going into somebody and you don't have that laid out, too soon. So prototype for yourself. Couldn't I just 3D print it? Well, yeah, and that's nearly always what people ask me to do. They go, well, couldn't you just 3D print this for me? Well, I have an example here. I love my 3D printers, and they are very precise. So I have a little, just a shape here that I made. Here's what I really love about this shape. This is two separate pieces that were 3D printed, and the tolerances are so close together that it fits together. Cannon Reeves, who happens to be on this call right now, Cannon will tell you that, you know, they can make perfectly fit pieces, very precise things on that 3D printer, but that's not the be all end all. It's not about 3D printing. It's about, you know, just getting your idea across. So that's where you need to go. That's where you need to get your head now. So start to iterate your idea. Start to prototype that idea yourself and get as far as you can honestly go. And that includes teaching yourself to do things. If you're serious about this idea, put the time in, do the work. There are no shortcuts. It's never as easy as saying, I have this great idea, I just need you to make it for me. One of the most hurtful statements people can make to me is, I just need you to make it for me. Like that's the easiest part of the job. It's not. It's hard. It's hard to put things together. It's hard to design things that have never been designed before and to get them right. And it usually means me iterating again. So don't have that mindset. Don't say, I've got this great idea, I just need you to make it for me. That's all it is. That's all I need. That's hard. Start doing it yourself. Do the work. Put the time in. Teach yourself the skills you need. All right. So then it comes down to this thing, beyond prototyping, and it's the big question. So here's the big question, you guys, and this is what a lot of your professors will probably hate me for. The big question is this: do I need a patent? You have your idea, you're ready to prototype that idea, you're ready to get that MVP. Do I need a patent for this idea? So we live in an unusual world. We live in a world where the physical and the digital may as well be one and the same. I can have a client send me a file over email, and by the end of the day, I can have a physical object for them from that digital file using my 3D printer or using my CNC machine, whatever. So the physical and the digital world are practically one and the same. So if you have an idea for a product and you're having that product manufactured, it's very likely that the second someone sees that product, they could say to themselves, well, I can make that. I could probably do it better. Now, if you have an idea for a new kind of artificial heart, you should probably get a patent. If you have an idea for a new way of using a can opener, you probably don't need a patent for that. So this is just a piece of advice, and this is free advice, and you can take it or leave it. I've seen a lot of product that never gets to market because they spent so long trying to get a patent for a pretty basic idea that by the time the patent comes through, and in one case, I can think of 3 patents because they got a design patent, they got their trademark, they got a design patent, they got, I forget the other one, but they ended up with 3 patents on this product. Before he could get that product to market, it was being manufactured in Israel. Not China, Israel, and being sold. And it was one of these products that when he brought it to me, I went, wow, that's a really cool idea. You should just start making those and selling them and get your brand out there so that everyone will buy your brand, because that's a really simple idea and somebody's going to come along and snatch it up and start making it for themselves. And they did. So you really have to ask yourself and probably talk to some folks who are going to be genuine with you and tell you whether or not this is an idea that needs to be patented. In the world today, I recommend most of the products that come to me, I recommend getting it on the market as quickly as possible, trademark it, brand it, get your brand out there. People love brand loyalty, and get that product sold and start making money. Just a piece of advice for whatever it's worth. All right. So we've gone through all of these steps. This is where we're at. You guys are ready to build a prototype. Is there anybody that's out there now that I have 15 minutes for questions? Anybody want to take a stab at a question?
Do you see that question, Joel?
The product, so helpful. What if the product is actually a program, something that's more in depth? Let's talk about that. I will tell you how I go about helping people develop a program. Initial prototyping, is that what you're asking me to do? Thumbs up, okay. The way that I advise people to begin to design a program is with PowerPoint, which seems kind of silly, but here's what it is. When you're designing a program, there's a flow to your program, right? If it's an application, what's the first thing that your user sees, right? Is it, now if it's a program within a system, like if you're writing a piece of script that's going to either debug or improve a program, maybe that's a little different thing. But if it's a situation like an app, if you're developing a program that's more like an application, what's the user experience? What's the first thing your customer is going to see? Can you create that as a slide? Can you show me what that looks like? If on that web page or within that program, there's a hotkey, something that I can click on. In PowerPoint or in Google Slides, you can add a hotkey. So if someone here, it will open one or another slide, exactly the way your program will open one or another function. Then show me what happens next, right? It's also just a really good exercise for you to do to work through that program. So that's nearly always what I recommend. If this is something different, then jump on and tell me what it is. I mean, short of needing to apply an NDA, give me an idea what this is.
Hi, can I ask the question? Sorry, I realized after and I needed to position myself before turning on the camera. Thank you for that answer. I was thinking something more along the lines of like a subscription or a user experience or something like I don't know, like the Beachbody exercise program, that what you're buying into, like a subscription and a series of things. I mean, not the, you know, the coaching part of it. I mean, just like, you know, buying into like an exercise video set or buying a subscription to like master class or something like that, something that is supposed to kind of develop along the way. How much of that, you know, let's say it's a 12-part thing, right? 12 videos or whatever it is. How much of that would you need to prototype before? Would you need to prototype the entire thing before you would start looking for funding sources?
So what you're really, and I'll give you an example. So I've written a lot of educational programs.
Mm.
And that's the thing I would most compare that to. And typically what I do is I approach it as a series. So let's say that okay, there's a couple of things I'd recommend. One, you can flesh out the idea and then pitch it and hopefully, get the funding to do it. In a way, it's a little like writing a book, right? I have this great idea for a book. I've written most of my manuscript. If I had more time to write my book, I could finish it. So I'm looking for a publisher, right? That's one way to look at this. So if you can flesh enough of your program out to be able to very succinctly sell it to someone and they see something that intrigues them, then you can get funding for it, right? Because that's what it boils down to. And I'll tell you guys, there are only a few things that sell a product. One is, I've never seen that before. Oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. I've got to have it, which is, it's so damn cool that I'll pay anything, right? Or it saves me money, saves me time, or makes me money. That is it. That is it. Those four things, that's it. If it doesn't hit one of those four criteria or all of them, I don't know what to tell you. But if you can do that, if you can actually create something that you can pitch that shows that, then you can get funding for it. So how far do you need to take it? Well, you may want to think about fleshing it out enough that you've got the first one and done, because that will give you enough room to say, okay, now that I've got that done and I can sell it, I can be working on my next one. Again, the way that someone might be writing a book series, right? I'll finish the first book, I'll get it sold, my publisher will pay me, and then I can work on my next book, right? So that best advice from me.
Thank you.
For what it's worth.
Thank you.
Hey, Joel, it looks like Canon provided another tool as a resource here called Figma. And
oh yeah, can you talk about that, Canon?
Sure. Yeah, making hardware prototypes can be a bit different than software, especially because the expectation of quality for software is so high. I would recommend using Figma if you have a team of people that wants to work on a design. It's kind of becoming the industry standard as opposed to some Adobe products. And you can make animations pretty easily with it. There's a lot of starter templates. What I would recommend doing is just searching for kind of a similar app and then just like stealing all of the UI they make and just kind of adjusting it to fit yours. So you don't spend a ton of time making it look good. Yeah. If you have a mock-up and you want something functional, I would recommend using something like Bubble, and I can send a link to that. It's basically a no-code way to make web apps. I built an entire content management site on it, so it's pretty powerful. But also, if there's a way for you to not build things on your own and use existing tools, like with the video class, rather than building your own hosting site for all the videos, definitely leverage existing tools. You may lose some money, you may lose some margin by using another person's product, but you'll save a lot of time and focus on the thing that makes you unique.
There's things like the only one I've ever used, and I am not an app builder. The only one I've ever used is MIT App Builder, which was kind of one of the early ones that really came along. But yeah, Canon's got a lot more experience doing those than I do. But that goes back into the idea of using materials at hand. Not everything has to be expensive. If you guys look at the end of that PDF, there are a few examples I threw out. How many of you are typically using Adobe for what you're doing or wish you could afford Adobe? Typically see a lot of hands up, I wish I could afford Adobe. So one of the things I recommend for people, if you're looking for something that's free, that's out there, Inkscape is a really powerful program. It's free. It's an open source program. I use it almost exclusively now rather than Adobe because I spent so long teaching it, and I like to teach things that I can give away. It's kind of like if you can teach people to use a tool and then you can just give them the tool, then it's better, right? The other one is when you start getting into CAD. I know that Canon, you use Onshape, which isn't entirely free now, right?
For what they're doing, they can do it for free.
Oh, okay.
If you have a company on it, you'll have to pay, but it takes a while for them to catch you, so you can get away with it.
Okay, well, there's that. Also advice. There's also CAD programs like FreeCAD, which is a really powerful CAD program. It's completely free. It's another open source program. I use something called Fusion 360, which I think is a incredible program. If you're a student, you can get it free for up to 2 years. It's a little limited if it's the free program, but not terribly limited. I mean, almost anything that you want to be able to do with it, you'd be able to do. The prescription is about $60 a month, so it's a little more expensive, but it's worth it. The point to that is that there are all of these options that are out there, and if you're committing the time, do your research, and you will find the thing that you need. And it may not do everything you need, but it will get you further. And the one thing that you never want to do is throw your hands up in the air and just go, if I only had this, if I only had access to this, that's just an excuse. You know, you can buckle down, you can do it, it can get tough, you can make it happen. Just put in the work. That's it. What else?
You had mentioned having an idea, prototyping on it, and then selling it to a company. How do you usually suggest people go about that? I personally don't have like Walmart or Nike contacts or anything like that. But if you had an idea and you thought like, hey, Nike could definitely use this and they would buy it, how would you get into contact with someone to present your idea?
I'd probably call them.
Just on the help.
You'd be surprised. I'll be honest, network is powerful. I actually had somebody call me once contacted me on LinkedIn, and they said, I need you to get me a meeting with Elon Musk. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can't get you a meeting with Elon Musk. And they said, well, you're one connection away from Elon Musk. I had to go into my LinkedIn and looked, and sure enough, I had my buddy Dale Doherty. I was one person away from Elon Musk. And I thought, I could never ask him to ask for someone else to do this. So, I mean, networking is great, and you've got to do it. It's your most powerful tool. But another one is having the guts to walk in a door. And you'd be surprised how far it takes you. If you walk in and you are confident, it's amazing who you can get. It's like I told you, I got in an elevator with the president of Intel. I just happened to be in the same space with him, and he's the nicest guy in the world. And he was like, "Oh, this is great," and just talk to me. Everybody's a human being. You just have to try it, and and the worst that can happen is you get a no, right? And you'll hear a lot of no's, but that's okay. But do it. And that's just putting yourself out there. And now be smart about it. Don't give your ideas away. That's where you learn about things like non-disclosure agreements and having but you want to get an opportunity, make those opportunities happen. Just get yourself out there, or find someone who can be your champion for you, which is another great way to do it. I spend a lot of time bragging on people. One of them is on the call right now. Canon, I'm going to do it again. I spent a lot of time bragging on Mortec. It's an incredible company out of University of Arkansas. What they've done. The first time I met Canon, I looked at what they were doing and I said, you guys, this is going to be the next Lego. And I absolutely meant it. I was so impressed with what they were doing, and I've tried to be a champion for them ever since. Ambots is another company out of U of A that I'm on their board, and I couldn't be prouder of them. And I'll be a champion for them, right through wherever they go. So find those people, find your mentors, find your champions, folks who are going to support you, who are going to help you, and you'll move forward. I didn't do any, I don't know what I don't think I did anything for Canon. He did that all on his own. Yeah, you did.
You did.
Yeah, but winning personality, great products. I mean, they sell themselves, but that's what you do. Find, talk to people, put yourself out there, find your mentors, find your champions, and go for it. That's best advice.